Hey everybody, Robert with RC Archery. Thank you for tuning in to another Tuesday's Tip of the Week. It's been a while since I've done one of these and I want to apologize for that, but I have another business that I'm starting and it's keeping me busy with a lot of my time. So with that being said, I'm going to try to get as much content as I can out when I can for Tuesday Tip of the Weeks and also Full Draw Fridays. But it's probably going to be sparing, so bear with me. And if you haven't set up the notifications, there's a bell that you're going to see either on this video in the lower right underneath it or on our main homepage for this YouTube channel. Click that. It'll set up notifications and you'll actually see when I post the videos. So that way, since I'm not doing them week to week, you're not maybe looking out for them, you'll get a notification, you'll see them so you can view them and get all the content. But this video is going to be a special one for two reasons. One, I went back and I looked through and saw what was most popular with my videos because I wanted to make this, make an impact with this video and try to give you what you want to see. What I saw was that the most popular videos are the how to hold steady videos. So the different segments that I do on what I'm talking about for holding steadier. So we're going to have another one. I've got a segment here that I'm going to talk about that mostly haven't talked about in any of the videos that I've done prior to this. So it's going to be some new content. I'm going to be going over how to set our draw arm, our bow shoulder here, using our core to be able to support that bow arm. I'm also going to be going over the right muscles to use and how to set up tension correctly in order to get our bodies to actually hold steadier. So we take a lot of the shaking, the murmurs, the movements completely out of the system altogether. And then I'm also going to go over the way to weight our fingers on a handheld release, whether it's a hinge, a thumb button, or a resistance release, and then how to use our release hand to adjust trends and what we're seeing in our float. So if we're high, low, left, and right, a lot of that's coming from the back end back here, and we want to make sure that we're staying straight and in line, and I'm going to go over that too. The second reason this is going to be a fun video, something exciting, is that I'm announcing a giveaway. So if you've seen the last video that I did on a Full Draw Friday, it was over a benefit shoot that Archery Abroad was doing, and I've got 3 winners that I'm going to pick and show that here on camera, announce those, and be able to help out for your entry fees and if you want to shoot some future tournaments there. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So something really big that I see and notice with archers a lot is how they're using their bow arm, with more specifically how they're drawing the bow and how they're setting up for that. So when we talk about our form and what we're doing, we don't want it to be any different than if we were just to stand with our hands at our side and then lift them up directly, left and right. Our bow arm here, this is our natural positioning. A lot of archers, what they're doing is instead of just lifting their arms straight up and then having a flat area right in here and what they're doing, you'll see them with the shoulder up and back, and maybe they're leaning back. And if you noticed when I did this, my bow arm has a bend right here in the elbow. So that's a big no-no because we're using a lot of muscle strength, and just repeatability wise, if you're using muscle, it's going to be really hard to repeat that from one shot to the next. Now, another thing that I see with archers, because there was this trend, especially on archery talk, of everybody's draw length is too short. Now, a lot of archers are overextended. Their draw length's actually too long. And what they're seeing is instead of their arm being here where the shoulder joint is actually in the socket, it's being supported because if you notice my shoulder here is directly underneath my core and my hip. All of this muscle and all of this mass from our body will actually hold this arm up for you. So what they're doing instead is they're overextending this arm and they're stretching out and they're really pulling this shoulder joint out, and they're stretching their arm and they're hyperextending their arm and they're pushing out with the wrist. And when you're doing that, you're losing every bit of stability that your muscles in your body and your joints are going to give you. When you have a draw length that's too long and you're overextended on this front arm, you're going to see wavy float that you can't really control and you don't feel like you can do anything. It might be wavy and even going down. So not to be confused with like target panic where it's holding low. It's just your body's constantly fighting the bow to go down because you don't have any support throughout your muscle. And reverse that, if you're too short, everything's going to get really buzzy and really tight, and you'll see big spikes because you have a lot of movement available and you're not stabilizing anything because maybe you have a bend in your elbow or maybe your shoulder is up and back and you're fighting that bow up and down with really quick, jerky movements. So what we want to do with our bow is the same thing we want to do with our arm. We want to be able to just lift our arm straight up. And when you're here, you're going to be able to draw. Now there's 2 points to this. One that I'd like to make as far as how you want to draw with the height of the arm, and then what you want to feel for once you get to full draw. Now with the height of the bow arm, what we're looking for is the hand to be just slightly above the shoulder. And the reason we do this is when our hand is just above the shoulder, so we're not sky drawing, but just barely above. When you draw the bow back, you're drawing a little bit down. One, that's good for the release arm shoulder. You're not going to be like hurting the shoulder or putting any kind of excess strain on it. But two, what you're going to be doing is actually, as you pull in this motion, in this direction and coming across, you're actually seating the joints. So you'll see the bow arm, it kind of seats itself and pushes in, and it takes the excess out of the joints and pushes them together. And what that does, obviously, allows you to hold steadier with your bow. Now the second part to this is do not adjust your form or your placement of your arm or anything in regards to when you draw the bow back. A lot of archers, what I see do is the draw length form is actually improperly fit to them. They're too long, they're too short. So they may have good intentions of lifting the bow arm straight up from their side, so coming to here, but then as they draw an anchor, maybe the string doesn't come to their face, so then they scrunch up because it's just naturally what they've been doing. Or they draw an anchor here and the string's too far back, so then they're pushing farther out to get the string to come to your face. So the main thing you want to look at this is drawing the bow and using this as a draw length test. This is what I do with a lot of archers when I coach them, but we should be able to just pull the arm straight up, draw it back, and then settle. And when we settle, that string, it came right to my face. I didn't have to manipulate my shoulder, I didn't have to manipulate my arm, I didn't do anything. All I did was just draw it, settle in, and come to anchor. It's perfect for me. If you can't do that, you need to adjust the bow. And that's gonna mean not just adjusting the modules, but maybe using the string, or if you're really close, even using the cables, or even the limb bolts here. You can use the limb bolts and back them out, turn them in if you're not bottomed out already. You can get some minor adjustments with your draw length there and just micro adjust and micro tune that draw length. That's gonna help you hold steadier on target. All right, so the next part here is what most people commonly misconstrue as back tension. Now, when it comes to a compound, it's different than a recurve system, and it's also, the modern compounds are different from past compounds. So we have a better back wall in pretty much every bow. We've got a lot of let off on some bows and not on other bows, depending on how you set them up, depending on the cams of them. And then we also have releases that we're using, so what we use to manipulate the release of the shot, not our fingers. So the type of shot that we have with compound is completely different from past compounds or recurves. What we're doing is trying to induce the least amount of movement into the system to get the best results downrange, because it's very tight groupings, very accuracy driven in the compound sport. So with that being said, let's talk about back tension and try to take away a lot of the myths that you've heard in the past. We're not trying to squeeze our shoulder blades together. We're not trying to rip the bow apart throughout our entire shot where we're pushing towards the target and pulling away from the target. And we're also not pulling just with our release hand away from the target in a really aggressive, rip the bow apart, move our arm, move our body around a lot. It's very minimal movement, and really, in all honesty, we want to take out all but maybe 1% of the movement completely before the shot ever begins. And what I mean by that is actually adjusting what we're doing to use the right muscles. Our muscles here around our scapula and our muscles here on the top of it in this area in our back. Those, along with our core muscles, are the bigger muscles in our body, in our upper body at least. Using bigger muscle systems allow you to hold steadier, and they fatigue a lot slower. So you're going to hold steadier for longer throughout the course of a shooting round, or if you're having to hold at full draw while you're shooting at an animal. Those are the muscles we're going to want to look at because they're going to fatigue less, and they're going to have less input on our pin and what we're seeing on movement downrange. Now when I come to full draw, what I'm doing is I'm inducing tension into the system at anchor and while I'm settling in on target. And what that means is, what it does for me is that as I'm drawing the bow and anchoring and settling, I'm expanding through my chest. So you'll see me, I take a breath when I'm here, and it expands out through the chest. And what that's doing is it's allowing me to push a little bit towards the target and pull a little bit away from the target. It's a very small, slow movement. And what I'm looking is for my pin on the target to slow down. So I'll have whatever movement that I see there, and it'll start getting slower and smaller and smaller and smaller until it's almost stopped on my best days, or as slow and small as I can get depending on the day, right? Because every day is a little different. So that's actually what I'm looking for. And then once from there, from when I get to that point, my shot is very stagnant. I have about 1% of movement. So if I'm relaxing the hand or relaxing the index or whatever I'm doing to fire that shot, I have a little bit of an additional movement to allow me to maintain tension, because what I'm looking for is I've already found the perfect amount of tension, right? I found the area that I'm smoothest on target, and the float is the smallest on target, so I don't want to change that. So I'm maintaining that tension, and then I increase what I need to in order to keep that sight picture. So if I notice that maybe my bow arm is dropping a little bit or the float is getting a little wavier, well, that means I'm relaxing or bleeding tension, and I'm losing it somewhere. I need to find out where. Maybe it's my release hand, maybe my bow shoulder is coming in. Who knows, right? Maybe I'm letting too much air out, and instead of standing up with my shoulders down and back and my chest out, maybe I'm starting to slump over. That's a really big deal too, especially if you don't have your peep height set the correct way. So I'm looking to maintain tension and hold it right here as I'm going through the shot. It's very minimal movement. I'm going to show you two sides of this, one facing me, so you can see I'm not really moving anything with my release hand or my arm on my bow arm or anything, and I'll show you from behind so you can see the muscles in my back and give you an idea of what I'm looking at whenever I'm drawing and getting to full draw. Step back just a little here. So again, make sure when you're drawing the bow back, we're going to draw it back, bow hand just above the shoulder, draw in. I'm going to anchor, take a breath. That allows me to expand my chest out, and I'm pushing towards the target and pulling away until I'm as steady as I can. Give you one more here so you can see from behind. You can get a good look at my back muscles and what I'm doing. So now that we know the right muscles that we're using and we're adding tension to, let's talk about the ones that we don't want tension in, because that's just as important as where we're adding tension. So if we're using our back and our bigger muscles rather, that's what's going to work the best, and we want to take away the smaller muscles. So that means making sure that we're relaxed in our release hand and our bow hand, making sure all of that's working combined, and you're not tensing up, you're not torquing the bow, you're not manhandling the release and causing torque on that release and problems, because you're wanting to feel this shot out. And I'll talk more about that later when I talk about the release movements. We're also wanting to make sure that our release arm and then our bow arm in this area is soft. We don't want to be holding a lot of tension or tensing up or doing anything like that, because that's actually going to induce movement. It's going to make our body shake, and especially when we start to wear down, it's going to make everything a little bit worse. So it's just as important. And what I do is when I get to full draw and I'm expanding out and I'm steadying up on target, when I'm steadiest as I can, I'm actually relaxing the release arm and the bow arm, and I'm getting to a click when I'm using a click on a hinge release. Or if I'm using a thumb release, I'm setting my thumb on the trigger, and I'm increasing that tension on there and setting the tension on that trigger button. And that's what I'm doing at that point, because I'm relaxing the arms. That's transferring the load of the tension. It's holding it in the back that way. All right, so the last thing I want to talk about is the way we're using our release hand, balancing the pressures on the release through the hand, and then what we're doing with it during the shot. So this is a big factor. I don't know that a lot of people really talk about this or think about it maybe, but it makes a big difference on our shot. It's really going to control what we're seeing as far as the trends of the movement downrange, and then also how steady we can get throughout the shot, throughout execution. A lot of people can hold steady until execution, but when they start their shot, that's when they start to break down. Now, if we're maintaining pressure and we're not changing that, outside of that, the only thing that remains is what we're doing with our release, other than the mental side, but that's a whole different video, right? On our release, what we're looking for is to get to full draw and then balance out some pressure. So on a hinge release, it needs to rotate, right? So we can't have all the pressure come off that index finger, because then you're gonna have to induce a lot of extra pressure and it's gonna cause movement. So we don't wanna do that. We wanna still have pressure on the index. Normally what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw back with 70 or 80, maybe more, of the percentage on my index, and then a little bit on the thumb and a little bit on the middle finger here, because I use a 2-finger release. When I use a 3-finger release, I do the same thing. I don't really worry about my 3rd finger until I get to anchor and start to work through that shot. But once I get to anchor, what I'm gonna be doing is actually curling that middle finger and setting it into the finger bed and pushing into it with some pressure. And I use this and I set my click up for the speed and the travel of the release to where I don't take all the movement away from my index, but I'm balancing it out. Because when you balance the pressure out in the hand, it's going to allow you to hold steadier on target. You'll actually see this if you study your float and look at it during the shot. You'll see yourself as you're adding that pressure on the middle finger and you're balancing the hand out and balancing the pressures out, you'll actually see it steady up and you'll see it hone in on the middle. Now that's release speed on a hinge, and it's going to be how you're holding and repeating the pressures on a thumb button or a resistance release, and that's very important on both of those styles of releases. Now the second part of this is what we're doing with that pressure. Once we've evened the pressure out to where you're seeing a good balance there, it's maybe 60-40 on pressure between the index and the middle finger, or between the index and the middle and ring finger combined, you're looking at what we're doing with our hand. Now, if you're starting to notice a lot of left or right movement on the target, you may be pulling this release hand and the pressures away from your face, into your face, up or down. And you can do that with the way you're bending your wrist here. I'm a big proponent of keeping a straight line through the wrist and through the forearm. You don't want a big bend in any direction, you know, even left or right. I see a lot of people left and right here. That's showing you that your release speed, if you're using a hinge, is too fast or too slow. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll bend their wrist in like this. And when they're doing that, it's because their release is too slow and they're having to crank down on it with their hand and they're pulling that in. Or possibly your loop length is wrong. When your loop length is wrong, you'll start to adjust what you're doing with your wrist. If it's too long or your string is too far back on your face, you'll start bending at joints or moving things to take up the extra distance because your elbow is trying to go too far around behind your head. That's a big one too. Don't shoot a shot, draw back on target, play with it. And you can actually see that as you're holding, you can move your wrist and you can feel the pressure in your release hand here, and you'll see that you can move your pin around. So this isn't a Band-Aid fix if you hold low and you have target panic, but it is something to think about when you're looking at the trends of your overall movement and your misses. So if you have some shots that just pop all of a sudden and the bow goes high, low, left or right, something happened throughout that shot to force it to go that way. If you're not torquing the bow with your grip, you're moving something around with the release hand. So that's another big factor to look at whenever you're holding steady on target. All right, so as I mentioned at the first of the video, we're having a giveaway too. So I'm actually gonna take my quiver off because I'm gonna use the release pouch for the giveaway. So I'm gonna take my release out really quick. By the way, TrueBall Fulcrum Flex. The Fulcrum Flex or the Abyss Flex, the new ones that you can change the models out. I've had a lot of people asking me the release piece on here. This is made by me. This is the original ones that came out. And I know that there's some out now by Colby Hanley. I went to him when I was wanting to have one of these. He didn't have the time at that point to be able to make them. So I started working on some designs and got it perfected to where it fits really nice. Not any weird movements. The inside of this, you will have to put the washer on that's supplied from TrueBall for this to fit, because there's a slot within this plastic piece that allows you to be able to adjust this. So you can still spin this back or forth. Some people like it to come a little bit further down because they can hook their finger in there and actually feel like a little bit steadier and a little bit more peace of mind whenever they're working through their shot if they're off the side of the release. I just run mine in a normal configuration, but I sell these on my website. The black model that I have is $18 shipped anywhere in the US. The colored versions are $24 shipped within the US, and I do ship outside of the US. Just send me an email and we can work out shipping depending on where you are. It's usually not too bad. But yeah, keep these in stock as well as I can. They go pretty quickly, and I have to continually start ordering and getting them in from the printers, but they are here. For the giveaway, for this portion, I've got 5 names. So I'm gonna put them in here, mix them around a little bit, and then I'm gonna draw 3. So if you didn't watch the last video, I'll put a link for it here in this one so you can go back and look at it. It's me shooting a target round from Archery Abroad, the full round. It was actually one that I ended up winning that event. Thankfully, it's wasn't my best shooting ever, my best scores ever, but I'm glad to win, right? A win's a win. I also decided to donate 3 additional entries beyond what I'm going to do today. So these today are going to be separate. So these are just me giving back to the people that watch these videos and saying thank you. So first one here, I'm going to unfold it. We've got Drew. Drew, I will send you, try to send you a message if I can find you on Facebook. I should be able to find you through Archery Abroad and be able to get this to you. If you see this video, you want to get back in touch with me, definitely do so. You can email me. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me. That is the first one. I've got the second one here is David S. David, again, hopefully it shows up. I'm right underneath a light. But I'll get in touch with you as well. And then I've got one more that I'm going to draw. So we'll see where I'm coming out with here. And this one is Zachary S. So S was a popular last name, guys. We've got it here. I'll get in touch with all of y'all. I appreciate you, wanting to do this and wanting to have, some support for Archery Abroad and part of this giveaway and everything here. One last thing, I'm gonna end the video. You're noticing, hopefully, I have a Rogue bowstring shirt on. I sell Rogue bowstrings. This is ones that I use on my personal bows, customers' bows. Friends of mine use these. They're rock solid. And yes, I did find value enough in them to switch from the previous string maker that I was using. And the reason being is, 1, ship time. I get them pretty much a week, no matter what time of year it is. And then 2 is the quality of them. They have custom made machines and they work really well on their serving. I haven't had any serving separate. The loop, or the serving rather, where the loop goes, spot on, doesn't break apart really. You get to really reef down on one of those loops to get it to break apart. So I really like that part of them. And you can also get them custom colors, custom center serving size, all of that. I sell 4 sets, 4 styles on my website, all 3 of theirs plus one of my own. It's a RC Archery design spec that I use, and basically it's their pro version, but with X instead of 452X. So I like the X a little bit better generally on what I'm using because it makes a softer shot on the feel rather softer on the shot. For the month of September, I've got a sale on their R19 Pro Series. So they're normally $139.99. I'm actually have them on sale for $119.99, and you can find those on my website, rcarchery.com. And be glad to get you set up and get you hooked up for hunting season. I know that's coming up, indoor season. That's what I'm starting to shoot for, and I'll have a live video I'm doing on Instagram right after this one that I'm filming to look through setting up a bow and seeing which one that I pick. But again, thank you for tuning in. Thanks for watching, for subscribing, for sharing these videos, and listen to me being long-winded and talking. So that's also why I have the Full Draw Fridays. Less talk, more shooting. But again, thank you very much. Hope y'all have a good day. I'll see you soon.